Hey, Eastern Oregon, welcome to this November the 3rd version of AM Live on EOA, your connection to Eastern Oregon, and also on Roku. How are you, man?
It's good. It's first Friday.
Yeah. And
Good.
winter showed up, man.
I'm not a fan.
I mean, the first snow.
I need one of those scrapers with the glove.
Do you?
Yeah, I use a credit card.
Well, I do too. You know, I've had, and you probably had to, I've had one of those before. The problem is the glove part is too small for my hand. A lot of times.
I've never had one. I've just seen them. I think
Yeah.
I need one of those though, because by the time I was done, my hand was freezing.
A credit card works really well.
See, and then you don't have to. I mean, it's always in your wallet. You don't have to find it in your car.
Yeah. Do you remember when I was a kid, they had these metal glasses, or they had glasses, you know, like drinking glasses, but they were made out of tin. And we had some of those. And one time my mom scraped the window with that because there was frost on the window, like not knowing that she left these little circles all over. My dad was so angry.
Etched into the glass?
Yes.
You know what a smart guy does?
What's that?
Gets down there a little earlier and just starts the car and lets.
Well, yeah. Some people they'll cover it too. I mean, they'll like throw a blanket or something over the windshield. And no,
I'm not a smart person either.
Yeah.
I'll get down there about 7:09.
See, Tanya's family is like, yeah, that's what garages are for. Is you put cars in.
My family, what garages are for is storage.
Yep, me too. I was like that. I've never been in a place that had an empty garage and like you store the car in there. Really?
My grandparents did. My grandma kept her Cadillac in the garage, but my parents were like, yeah, no, there's no car in the garage. That's where all the dog stuff is.
Exactly right. Yeah.
Extra washer and dryer and stuff. Freezers.
Yeah.
My ex-wife, her grandmother was they're German Mennonites. And she had 11 freezers, BC.
Oh my goodness.
All full.
Really?
Yeah.
Like full of
food, frozen food. This lady had, I mean, like she had enough food for like 10 years. I'm not lying. It was crazy. Something went on sale and Granny would go down, and it wasn't like one or two. It was like one or two cases.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yep.
So some people don't use their garages for cars.
No.
My family doesn't. No. Even when I had a garage, it was turned into like a workshop.
Well, storage. That's what garages are for. Garages are for.
They're not for cars.
No, they're not for cars.
I think
for like, that is
for.
Yeah. When I was a kid, and Dad is like, that was the only man cave that you had was the garage.
Yeah.
And the only thing that made it a man cave was that we had an old car radio that was run by a battery charger, so that Dad could listen to
that just makes everybody realize how old you are.
Right? Yes, it is right there. Yeah.
Me and you've never had a garage because we never had a car that needed to go in a garage. At least I haven't. Well, I had a really nice car before I got married.
Yeah.
And then that went to
We have a nice car now, but it's only because we were given it. We inherited from Tanya's mom when she passed. And Tanya and I have this conversation. It's like, when do we get to drive the Cadillac? Actually,
on Sundays.
On Sundays. It's it's like, what's the point?
That's it. Only on Sundays.
That's a whole nother conversation.
Let's do some sports.
Do sports. All right, here.
LaGrange girls won their playoff game last night against the Dowls in soccer 7-1. It was close the first half. I think it was like 2-0 going into the second half, and LaGrange rattled off like 4 goals in 9 minutes. Gave up a goal. It looked really cold out there. I didn't go. I had a friend that, streamed it, bootlegish style, I guess. So I got to watch some of it. But yeah, they're going to play this Saturday in Grants Pass against Hidden Valley at noon, and that's the quarterfinals. EOU volleyball this weekend, number 1 team in the country in the NAIA. They play at home 5 o'clock on Friday, 7 on Saturday. These are the last 2 regular season games of the year. Like I said on Tuesday, if they win 1 out of 2, they win the CCC and host the conference tournament, which is going to be huge. We have 2 teams in the top 5 in the CCC, in Corbin and us, and we haven't beat Corbin in the CCC tournament since 2016.
Oh wow!
Yeah, we've won we went undefeated 2 years ago in the CCC, and lost to Corbin in the championship game here.
Oh man!
In the CCC tournament, we've only ever won the CCC tournament 1 time.
I'm sorry, and sorry for my where's Corbin at? Like,
Salem.
Salem. Okay, all right.
It's the old. So Corbin used to be Western Baptist.
Okay, all right.
And now they're Corbin. They're on the hillside out there in East Salem.
Okay,
it's not. It's a beautiful campus too. Senior day for EOU football this Saturday, 1 o'clock. C of I. They're 1-8. I had another. I mean, I was so excited last week because I got to interview Coach Camp after a win. And then this week we're right back to, we had a rough game at Carroll. Yeah, hopefully senior day is different. CVI is number 12 in the country right now, and they beat us, I want to say 40-0 there, 41-0 over there.
Over there.
Yeah, so
wow.
It might be a tough senior day for our EOU guys. We got 20 some odd seniors. So,
wow.
Yeah, they're gonna a lot of seniors.
So that's this Saturday at what time?
1 o'clock.
1 o'clock.
Community Stadium.
All right.
And then finally, tomorrow night, LHS football 6 o'clock, right here on EOA Live. The playoff game versus Cascade, which is in Turner over by Salem. At halftime, I'm going to have some special guests, so pay attention to halftime. Don't leave at halftime. You're going to want to see this one.
Yep.
Yeah, it's going to be fun.
Cool. And if they win,
and Pendleton wins,
right,
in this round, then next Friday, Community Stadium, LeGrand and Pendleton.
And that'll be a good matchup.
That Pendleton's a lot scarier on turf for one thing, because they're fast.
Right.
And for another thing, if it's nice weather and they can throw, it's going to be a different game.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to have to come to play. We can't be messing around and be undisciplined like we've been with all the false start penalties. My gosh, we have more false starts than probably the whole 4A league combined. It's really that bad and I, like I said, I think it's kind of like fumbling. You get that jinx in your head, and then it's just a downhill spiral from there.
Wow.
So hopefully we clean it up this week. We'll see.
Yeah.
We shouldn't have much trouble with this team tomorrow. Baker beat them to start the season over there, and we throttled Baker. I mean, so hopefully we don't have much trouble in the first round.
Cool.
Yeah.
So, and I guess let's look at weather. Well, I keep forgetting here. Pretty out there. It's fall, but yeah, it's cold, isn't it?
It looks cold.
Yeah. Let's see what Gabe has for us.
Going back to Tuesday night, that was a forecast check on my end. Here's a report from Larry Miller out of Cove. 3,200 feet elevation. He picked up 5 inches of snow. Same elevation, but my place out in Somerville, we only saw about 1.5 inches, but nevertheless, a very pretty sight. Getting into the day on Thursday, generally dry conditions across our region, but there will be increasing clouds throughout the day. If we can see that thicken up a little bit earlier up towards the north, there's a slight chance that we could see a few sprinkles or flurries depending on the elevation late day into the evening. Otherwise, dry conditions for much of us as we see a little bit more sunshine out towards our south, with temperatures into the mid to the upper 30s across the central part of our region and 40s elsewhere. Heading into the day on Thursday for LeGrand, it looks like this will start out into the mid to the upper 20s at the 8 o'clock hour. A mix of clouds and sun. Southwesterly winds during the day will remain fairly light, not tracking gusts higher than 20 miles an hour. More gloom for the afternoon, depending on how quickly we see that thicken up. Highs will reach the upper 30s to about 40 degrees, and there's a slight chance, maybe a few flurries as early as the 8 or 9 o'clock hour. But if we can manage to stay dry through about midnight, we will see those temperatures briefly drop into the 20s. And then once we get past midnight, likely snow returns with a couple inches potentially before that switches over to rain during the day on Friday as those highs reach the mid 40s. As that front moves in, I'm tracking anywhere from 40 to 50 mile an hour wind gusts late Friday and into the weekend.
Wow.
How many takes do you think it takes him?
I don't know. We gotta get that video though. He's got a video on YouTube where he shows kind of the gaffes that he makes and stuff, and it's pretty funny. But he does, I mean, like he does that all in one take. I mean, so he does it over and over again. There's no edits in that.
I wonder how many times it takes him to restart him.
Yeah.
Why doesn't he edit it? Weathermen don't edit their...
Weathermen do not edit.
Has to be one continuous roll.
Well, yeah, most of the time they're live, and so you can't edit, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I can do my show in one continuous roll most of the time. But I also don't go off a script. Yeah. Which is way different. Yeah. He's using a script.
No, I think he's I mean,
he's got to have some of that information on
I don't know.
Prompter. He's got.
Well, I mean, the graphics are kind of leading him through it.
So he's watching the graphics.
Right. Yeah, he can see the graphics that are changing behind him. It's a pretty cool setup.
I'll ask him how many takes it takes.
Yeah, we'll have to ask him.
I wonder.
So yeah, and we do have a new weather sponsor, Valley Insurance, who is downtown in the Grand. They just recently moved from Washington Street they're in the old Umpqua building, bank building downtown. And anyhow, they're going to be our new weather sponsor. Really glad to have them on with us. So, all righty. Well, this morning we have Dusty Alum with us. And Dusty is the president of the LeGrand Firefighters Union. And those of you might have followed that there was a public safety forum with the candidates a couple of weeks ago. It's probably been 3 weeks ago now. And I ended up pulling that forum because of stuff that we've already talked about. But the real loss for that was the firefighters who were not able to, and the public safety folks that were not able to talk about some of the issues that they're facing. And so then we wanted to have an opportunity for Dusty to come on and talk about that. And so he'll be right with us. He'll be with us right after this.
Want to keep yourself informed with relevant news and events in Eastern Oregon but don't have much time on your hands? Well, here on EOA Live, we pay attention to what's happening in Eastern Oregon and deliver the news in 2 minutes or less on our evening news roundup. You can expect to get your news delivered right to your Facebook and Instagram feed every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 6 p.m. We'll keep you in tune with Eastern Oregon, and you can count on that. EOA Live, your connection to Eastern Oregon, now on Roku.
Eastern Oregon's weather can oftentimes seem unpredictable. 1 minute it'll be raining, then it'll be sunny and wonderful, then snowing and then sunny, then the next it'll be raining cats and dogs, literally. So how do you prepare yourself for such flip-floppy weather? Well, by tuning into EO Live Weather with me, Gabe Curtis, of course, the most accurate weather forecast in all of Eastern Oregon. I'll keep you informed with daily weather updates that can take an in-depth look through the next 7 days. Because if cats and dogs are literally going to fall from the sky, you will want to know. EOA Weather right here on EO Live, your connection to Eastern Oregon.
All right, we're back. Thanks, Dusty, for being with us. Yeah. So how's it going? I mean, talk to us about what the life of a firefighter experience is.
So at LeGrand Fire Department, we run the ALS ambulance service for the entire county. So I don't know, a lot of people know that. We provide fire coverage for the City of LeGrand along with mutual aid to our other jurisdictions in the area. We're the only paid fire department, fully staffed fire department that has people to respond 24/7. The other outlying agencies are all have volunteers. LeGrand Rural has a full-time chief, and then some volunteers that respond to calls for them. But so if somebody has a medical emergency in Elgin and it requires an ALS ambulance, we respond out there, Union, North Powder, up into the wilderness sometimes. And so we staff 2 ALS ambulances with 4 of our people. And then if we are fully shifted that day with 5 people, we'll have an extra person there and we'll call people back in off shift if people are available to come back in. We sometimes we'll have multiple medical emergencies out of the area, out of LeGrand at once, and they have to rely on people to come in off duty to cover any other calls that happens. And we do have multiple instances where we do run 3 or 4 calls at once. One within the last 5 or 6 years, I remember we had the fire at Ed Stobbs when one of their buildings exploded.
Right.
And while a crew was dealing with that, people that came in off duty for the fire ended up running, I think, 7 or 8 medical calls all within an hour or 2.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. And thankfully with that explosion, there wasn't much fire. There was no fire, right?
Yeah, it was more making
it's like
sure
a
that
boom. Yeah.
everything that all the exposures were okay, and then
Right.
going through the debris to make
But
sure.
you had another incident that was going on.
We had 6 or 7 medical calls that occurred while we were on scene of that fire.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, I mean, a lot of people might not understand that. So ALS is what?
Advanced life support. So
Okay.
if you're possibly having a heart attack, any kind of difficulty breathing, seizures, any kind of severe medical illness that one of the volunteer agencies might not be able to handle, because there's only 2 other ambulance services in the county, one in Union and one in Elgin. They're both volunteer services. So if they're at work and they can't respond, even if it's not an ALS emergency, then we end up responding also.
Okay. And so then, I mean, that sounds like a lot of stress.
It's definitely not a job for everybody, because there is some stress involved. I mean, you do have people's lives in your hands depending on how sick they are. So making sure you make the appropriate decision to treat that patient, how to treat them, can be the difference between life and death for somebody. Sometimes there's stuff that we can't do. People in cardiac arrest, we do our best to help them as best possible, but sometimes we don't get there in time. The survival rate for people in cardiac arrest is very low, no matter how fast we get there. But we don't necessarily get to change those outcomes, unfortunately.
Right.
So
what if you had a percentage of your ALS calls versus your firefighting? How does your life look like in that?
A majority of our calls are medical in nature with us. So in 2003, the ambulance service came over to the City of LeGrand from the hospital, and that allowed us to add another person per shift, so that we have 5 people on each shift. Our minimum staffing each day is 4. We allow 1 person to be on vacation so that we don't cover back or anything with overtime. But having that extra 5th person with the ambulance service has allowed us to be able to more fully respond to fires, because unless there's a known life threat when we go to a fire, we're supposed to have 2 people in, 2 people out. So if something happens to that crew that's in there, there's 2 people that can go in and try to save those people. So 2 people is not the number that nationwide is needed to save somebody. Usually if there's a down firefighter, it takes like 10 people, but it's a start. So when we took the ambulance service over, that allowed us to have a more fully staffed fire department, which then allowed us to do more things. The majority of our calls, though, are medical. We do go on a lot of fire alarms. Luckily for us, we've done a good job with fire prevention. If you look at like
Baker and Pendleton and some of those other ones, they seem to have more frequent fires than we do. So I don't know if we've already just went through that phase where we don't have a lot of fires. Fortunately, because people losing all their stuff in a fire, people
Right.
being injured is very tragic. But we have mitigated what we can for the most part, and we really don't even have some of the wildland fires. Like there's a lot of fields around here. Not all of them are in our jurisdiction, but we do get called for mutual aid, and not a lot of those have caught fire, luckily, also.
Yeah. So one of the reasons that you put the forum together, and I think you kind of headed that up, was to say, hey, we have some concerns, we have some issues, and part of your calls have increased, I think, because of Measure 110. And I don't know. Once you talk about how you guys came through COVID, and then how
Okay.
Measure 110 has affected what you guys do.
So COVID, there for the initial part of COVID, and there wasn't a lot because everybody was, stay home. There's nothing that the hospital's going to do for you necessarily, those type of things. So there was a significant decrease for a good couple weeks there in calls. And since then, it's just kind of exploded. Last year, I believe we ran 3,281 calls. This year, we're on pace to hit 3,300 calls again. When I started 8 years ago, we ran just over 2,700 calls. So it's been a 500 call increase, and our staffing level is still the same. Back when we had the ambulance service for the first full year, they ran 1,830 calls. So it was almost 1,500 call increase since then. Again, the same staffing level. When I started here, if anybody that worked at the fire department worked until retirement through the fire department at LeGrand. And now we are more of a transitional fire department where we have most of the people that work there have around 3 years or less experience with the fire department. And there's a few of us that have more than that. But we've also had multiple people that have started, worked a few years, and left. So each time we hire somebody new, it takes us a fair amount of money and time to get them trained up. And then we, unfortunately, haven't been able to retain everybody because either they're, don't have a tie to the community and they want to be closer to family, or, they've taken jobs that are better suited for them that either pay more or closer to family, those type of things. And we haven't met those needs. Plus, we run a significant amount of calls, and it can wear on people, fatigue and a little bit of burnout happens.
So how many, but are you also seeing some firefighters that grew up here, and they're being, are some of them being hired away to other places?
So there are some that, went through college here and are from Eastern Oregon that worked here and then left.
Uh-huh.
Unfortunately, they've went other places. They've got other jobs that either pay more or more suited to their lifestyle, that maybe they don't have to live in the big city. They can, commute a few hours. Most of us, me personally, I would never think that, oh yeah, an hour and a half commute would be, that sounds like fun, but everybody else
Right.
seems to, everywhere else commutes lots. I know one guy lives locally here and then commutes up to Pasco to work.
Wow.
There's I believe a gentleman that lives here and then flies down, works his shifts in California.
Wow.
And just works 10 days straight and then comes back.
So, because every professional field that there is in a rural area like LeGrand, you're trying to draw professionals in. Mm-hmm. and hopefully, everybody who's smart about it has kind of a grow your own. Mm-hmm. You're trying to harvest people that are locally, that have an appreciation for our local rural area, mm-hmm. and they become professionals, and they're much more likely to stay. But it sounds like even that plan has not worked.
Unfortunately, no. We do have, the union worked with the the city on a plan. We have 3 new hires right now. All of them are EMT basics, so that's the lowest level provider that we can have to operate an ambulance.
Okay.
And you have to have that in order to get your paramedic, and that's the highest level that we have to operate in the ambulance. That's what gives us our ALS certification. We've worked with the city, and all 3 of those people, the city will, after they're off probation, help facilitate them by paying for schooling and help them get their paramedic certification to kind of grow our own. It's really difficult here because up until recently, Blue Mountain College only had an EMT program. They didn't offer any paramedic. There's no paramedic program close by other than up in Tri-Cities, which is a couple hour commute,
Right.
and makes it a lot more difficult for people. Whereas Bend, they have a community college that offers those programs. Southern Oregon has a community college that offers those programs. Salem, we didn't have that facility here to help do it. There's a lot of stuff. The program I went through was actually online for the most part, and then I traveled back east to do skills assessments and go through some extra training, and then I did all my internships here, and then I went back and tested back east. So
Okay. So like you, for instance, you have a certification to be a paramedic, and then you also have some firefighter certifications also, right?
Yeah, because we're a dual role fire department. We do everything.
Okay.
If you are in a car accident, we respond. If you are in having a medical emergency, we respond. If it's some kind of rescue, we're going to be there. If it's a fire, we're going to be there. Wildland, for the most part, we're going to be there, especially in the city limits or nearby. We have mutual aid agreements with LeGrand Rural and other outlying areas so that we respond to those things. Jurisdictions are all funny. Everybody has different response areas that are just theirs, and ours, vary compared to the fire districts. Like LeGrand Rural is a lot larger because they have farm ground, all that stuff. We have LeGrand City proper, and then we have some freeway and highways that we respond to that are just us. So,
wow.
But yeah, we have to be able to do it all, which is why when we hire somebody new, it takes us a long time to get them up and running, because we have to make sure that they are comfortable with extricating the patient, that they're comfortable with providing care to that patient to their level.
Wow.
So, because if they come in off duty for that third out call while our other 2 ambulances are out, they might be the person at the EMT level providing that patient care for a very sick person, not necessarily a paramedic.
Wow.
So
has it changed? I mean, it seems like, probably 10 years ago, I had a friend who really wanted to be a firefighter paramedic. But it was and this was in another area, but it was a very challenging field to get into. Has that changed over the last 10 years?
So it has. So there are more job openings right now in the state of Oregon for firefighters, EMTs, firefighters, paramedics. No training at all. They don't care at this point. You got a pulse, come on in, we can train you.
Wow.
Like it is to the point that there's such a shortage, not just state of Oregon, but nationwide, for firefighters, EMTs, paramedics, because the last 2 years there's been all these travel contracts and stuff that's just exacerbated the shortage that was coming.
Right.
There's been mandates that have forced people from the field. They've said, I'm done. Also the burnout. People, right. I know people personally, I went to high school with, that their husband was a firefighter, and they've seen all the stuff that you're not supposed to see all the time.
Right.
And unfortunately, they decided that it's their time for them to be done.
Yeah.
So,
wow. And, you see the same thing with nurses. So a lot of nurses, just because it's way more lucrative to become a travel nurse than it is to be a nurse at home.
Yeah.
And so I would imagine, is that same thing kind of happening?
Yeah, there's lots of
area?
Different contracts that you can travel down to Texas, Arizona, you can go overseas, you can do all sorts of things. Some of the paramedics leave and go to like Life Flight. They don't want to do the fireside anymore. They don't, they're more comfortable with the patient care, or they just, don't want the stress of going on all those emergent calls middle of the night all the time, and they want to work days, or maybe they went and became a nurse, or they left the field completely and I want to go be a teacher, or I want to go be a real estate agent.
Right.
They just want nothing to do with it because it can be exhausting. You talked about Measure 110 earlier. Since Measure 110 was implemented, I've given more Narcan to patients than all the previous years that I worked combined. So I started in 2015 until February 2021, and I could probably count on one hand the number of overdoses I'd went on, and I've been on more than double that since then. And unfortunately, we've lost a lot of people that are younger than me due to overdoses since Measure 110 was impacted. We talked about it a little bit at the city council meeting last night. Chief Bell was up there, and the statistics he brought up that he was able to, provide or sound very accurate. I mean, the measure, when it went into act, I understand where people were. They were hoping people would get help, because it's not compassionate to let people and die like that. It's not very compassionate at all, and that's not what anybody wants. I think we need to revamp something there, because what we did isn't working. It's horrible.
Right.
So
let's talk about that for a minute. So then you're seeing, what are you experiencing? Are you seeing so Narcan is so available for people with a drug habit now that they're kind of using that as a safety net? Is that what you're seeing?
So usually when we get on scene, if somebody is a user, they have Narcan available, or have a friend, family member that has Narcan. If you are somebody that uses an opiate and you don't have a friend or family nearby, Narcan's not going to save you, because you can't give it to yourself.
Right.
Unfortunately, if when we get there, if a friend or family member has been there, usually they've given them Narcan, and maybe they've given them a couple doses of Narcan. It takes time for it to work, especially if they're not breathing, which that's what an opiate does. It knocks out their respiratory drive, so they stop breathing. If nobody's breathing for them, getting that into the system where it needs to go, it doesn't start working as well until we start bagging them and stuff. We've started using a lot more Narcan. Fentanyl is a really potent drug, especially the street stuff. We give fentanyl for pain relief all the time, but it's a very, 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 very small dose, and it's very controlled. We are doing it for a purpose to relieve the pain from like a broken bone, something like that. When these people are taking it, they don't have any injuries, nothing to keep them stimulated to where they wouldn't possibly lose consciousness. And unfortunately, it's, like I said, caused a lot of deaths. I've given upwards of a total of like 16 milligrams of Narcan, which used to be, you could give a partial dose, like 0.4 milligrams of Narcan, and wake people up. And our regular dose is 2. The other thing that people don't realize is those doses of Narcan, with that medication, you have to store it properly. If it's not stored properly, if it's in your car, out in the sun, out in the cold, that medication, doesn't work as well. So that could play a factor into how well their Narcan's working prior to us getting there. The police officers that are giving tons of Narcan too. And unfortunately, there's a lot of people that aren't even necessarily calling 911 because they have the Narcan, they're using it at home, and they're coming out of it.
Wow.
But, there's a lot of people, unfortunately, that aren't getting the Narcan in time and aren't getting the help that they need. When the bill was passed, like I said, people, I'm sure, voted based off of, being able to help people, but the funds just haven't come around, and we don't have access to a lot of treatment in the state, unfortunately.
Right.
So Oregon's one of the ones that is like last on the list for treatment facilities for any kind of drug addictions or getting people help, even mental health facilities. It is very difficult to get people into a place where they need the help.
So, and I think Chief Bell shared that in previous years, if they had 10 overdoses, that was a pretty high in a year. And I think he said in this year, you guys are on track to have 60.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and it's hard to track because, in our stuff, we tracked, what type of overdose it was, because there's overdose on like alcohol, overdose on
Right.
marijuana, overdose on opiates, and then there's just overdoses, people trying to harm themselves from taking too much medications. So there's a bunch of different types of overdoses. We are definitely seeing a bunch of opiate overdoses, and a lot of times, unfortunately, it comes in waves. So if we get some kind of new drug out, somebody new shipment in, or however it's done, I'm not familiar with how that all works. I'm not keen on the drug scene, but if we have one, a lot of times then there's 2, 3, or 4, or it's something that's laced with like fentanyl and so forth. Very scary situation just last week that the sheriff's office, talked about with the pills at the grade school.
Right. Crazy.
As if it's as big of a container as it kind of sounds like per the article, I don't know that we carry enough Narcan. Like one of those pills with those kids, that's a lot.
Right.
So,
wow, that's crazy. And I would imagine that just the impact of you interacting with young people who are overdosing and some of them that die. I mean, does that have an emotional impact on you?
Yeah,
also?
it is. It's pretty hard. There's people, usually when people that are my age and younger, I'm not going to say I'm young anymore, but at 36 and younger, when they die, it's a traumatic event. So car accident stuff, some kind of accident, and because you're young, you're healthy,
Right.
You're not supposed to just die like that. This is not, it's traumatic that they're dying, but it's not something that, they lost control of a car or anything. Some kind of accident is something that they're doing. They aren't able to get the help or don't want the help at this point, and it's being made more readily available because there is no process for the police to try to, hey, like, you got to clean up, you got to stop, we got to do something, we got to get you the help, because they have no enforcement mechanism at this point.
Right. And I think that, the parents that I have talked to that have teenagers who have kind of wandered into the path, so then even the underage drug use has increased.
Yes.
And there's not a deterrent to keep kids from continuing down that path.
So when I was in high school, the two main things that kids used illegally were alcohol and marijuana. Those were the two that pretty much, not every kid, but if somebody was going to do something illegal, alcohol was readily available because parents had it. It was easy to sneak away. And marijuana, I'm assuming, was because the parents had it, and that's how they got it too. I don't know on that, because I didn't partake in that. But now with the decriminalization of these hard drugs, we're seeing teenagers, young teenagers, 13, 14, using meth.
Wow. Which
is life-changing. I was just actually getting my haircut yesterday, and I was talking to my hairdresser, and we're talking, she's like, people's brains aren't fully formed until they're in their late 20s. These kids have no idea what they're doing to themselves. And I said, yeah, it's horrible, because they're making a decision at this point in time that's going to change the rest of their life.
Mm-hmm.
And the DARE program, I remember that when I was a kid. There's education out there on it, but when you're young and you're a teenager, you think you know everything, but you don't, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And you're not indestructible.
So why do you do this? And I mean, let's kind of switch this back to, for you to do this, there's got to be some meaningfulness in it for you. So maybe talk about that.
I was born and raised in LeGrand. I went away and went to school at Oregon State my freshman year, and came back and started volunteering out at LeGrand Rural. And I said, man, this is a really cool career, something I'd really like to pursue. And the patients that you get to help and change their life, and on a bad day you can be something that is good, it really helps.
Yeah.
As much as we, you don't want people to have firefighting is cool. Like that is for sure. It's not something that everybody gets to do, not something everybody wants to do,
Right.
but it is one of the perks of the job when you get to go in and try to stop a fire, save somebody's house, those type of things.
Right. You
So,
got cool equipment. You got
Yes.
big equipment.
exactly. Yeah.
right.
Everybody wants to ride around a big fire truck.
Absolutely. Yeah.
The other thing is, I mean, my family's here, and I want to do the best I can for my family. When I get home from work and the stuff I see, I tell my son, don't do drugs. I never want to see you do drugs. And because why? I give them examples. I tell them this is what it does to you. I see the effects firsthand of drugs, what it does to people, unfortunately, and it's just sad.
Mm-hmm. Wow. So, what can the general public do to help? What can we do to help?
So, one thing for the fire department is be more informed with us and the police. Find out what's going on with us. Find out how much we're working, and then get a little more education as to how things work. When we show up at calls in outlying areas, they don't realize that we come all the way from LeGrand,
Right.
for those medical calls. So, being a little bit more informed and educated on those things, on these ballot measures, that come up like Measure 110, read the info, make sure you understand exactly how it's going to work, and then talk to like local law enforcement, because that's who it really impacts.
Mm-hmm.
Because everybody wants to do right. Everybody wants to do good. But I believe the path to hell is paved with good intentions. So,
yeah.
unfortunately, if you just have good intentions and don't have the wherewithal as to how those intentions are actually going to affect people, then bad things happen. Like I said, we've more overdose deaths this year. It is a chronic epidemic, not just here nationwide, but it is becoming easier for people to unfortunately die here because we don't do anything to try to stop it.
Yeah. Well, and I got to tell you, the fire one is, I mean, most people would not connect Measure 110 to how it affects a firefighter's life. Partially is because they don't put it together that a firefighter also is the EMS
Mm-hmm.
and so on and so forth. But but the other thing is that firefighters, when you see a firefighter or a fire truck, you either see them in a parade or it's all business. Well,
Mhm.
that's one of the two. I mean, either they're you see them, but the other times that you see an ambulance or a fire truck, they're like they don't have time for public relations in that moment, and so yes, I mean, you guys are a little bit hidden.
Yeah, we're not necessarily out in the
Right.
public like the police out patrolling, but I don't know if you'd want us out patrolling for medical emergencies and fires. But if you see us at one of those events or see us like down at the trunk or treat the other day, come up, talk to us,
Yeah.
ask us questions if you have questions, or if you want to tour the fire truck, we're more than happy to do those things. One of the things that I don't want to see happen is what happened down in Baker, unfortunately. With the private ambulance service coming in, I feel that we provide a really good service through the fire department based ambulance service and the fire department, and it allows us to have this more adequate staffing for the fire department.
Yeah.
If we lost the ambulance, I don't think we'd have the staffing that we have at the fire department, unfortunately, just like Baker.
Right.
Yeah, Baker went to a 2-person engine, which means that they're not going to be able to do any kind of interior firefighting for the most part.
So then you guys having the ambulance contract and providing those services then allows you to have a bigger crew that is available for fighting fires.
Like I said, we added an extra person back in 2003. As of now, I don't know if that's enough with what our call volume is,
Right.
but we'll take what we can get. When I started 8 years ago, there was always a worry that the bottom 3 people would be laid off just from budget constraints for the city. The last 4 or 5 years, unfortunately, that hasn't been talked about, and hopefully we wouldn't worry about that at this point, because we're wanting to add more people to
Right.
spread the wealth and make it a little bit easier and provide a better service, making sure the citizens of LeGrand get all the coverage that they need too. So the ambulance service plus the ambulance service, it doesn't generate enough money to be, revenue independent,
Right.
but it brings money back into the city through billing on patients and everything through insurance that allows the city then to, help fund other projects throughout the city.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Dusty.
Thank you
for coming in. And
I appreciate
and yeah,
having me.
and and I would just can people come down to the fire?
People can come down to this fire station if they want a tour. Like you said, we've got some new apparatus. We've been very blessed with getting some grants to get a new fire engine we got 2 years ago, and unfortunately it was like right in the middle of COVID, and I don't know if we ever necessarily got the ceremony of getting the new fire engine in place. We have a ladder truck that's like a $1 million piece of apparatus. Unfortunately, when you put emergency services on any piece of apparatus, the price goes up significantly. So
that's funny.
Yeah.
Well, I really appreciate you taking the time to come today.
I appreciate you having me down here.
Yeah, and I, hats off to what it is that you guys do.
Thank you.
If there's any way that we can point the camera in your direction, for things that you guys are doing, we like to do that. It's one of the reasons why we have Cody Bowen on the show. Just but I mean, if there's any way that we can help get the word out about good, fun things that you guys are doing, just be sure and let me know.
We appreciate that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. All righty. We'll be right back. All righty, we're back. That was good stuff.
Yeah, good.
Yeah. And I mean, like I said, firefighters are not very good at promoting themselves. Part of that is the character of who they are. I mean, they're first responders. They're just their business.
I had some questions I wanted to ask, but I mean, maybe we can get them answered later. When they talk about call volume, I want to know, like there has to be volunteers that are going out too, right?
Well, it would have been a good question. You should have asked that.
I know, because I want to know, like they talk about being short-staffed, but
right.
There's volunteers,
Right?
So they don't count as staff.
Right.
How many calls are they going? You know what I mean? Like that's something that would need to be looked at. I would think. And I don't know.
And I know that, I know that LeGrand Rural. Is it LeGrand Rural? I don't know. They're out in Island City.
Yeah, LeGrand Rural. Yes.
Yeah. So they have a full-time guy, but all of their staff are volunteers.
Yeah, my best friend used to.
Yeah.
That's when he talked about coming to LeGrand Rural.
Right.
My buddy Jeff was the paid guy there.
Yeah. Okay.
At LeGrand Rural.
Yeah. So
and now he works for a company like Lifelight.
Yeah.
Like Dusty was talking about.
So I wonder if like the LeGrand Fire, if they have volunteers that are a part of that, or if it's just a part of LeGrand Rural. Anyhow, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I have no idea. You know what
I know. I'm with you.
It's above my pay grade. That's my famous lines. But like when he talks about the Narcan thing, when you know where I stand on Narcan, but it's hard to not to not think like we can't get rid of Narcan. You know what I mean? Like that would be like getting rid of insulin. Like, you know what I mean? Like, because a person that a doctor can tell you, hey, you're going to get diabetes if you don't stop eating
right
sugar. right?
Right.
And people are still doing it, and we're
Right.
giving them insulin.
Right.
So we can't say, like, oh, well, we're not going to give you Narcan if you keep doing dope.
It's a terrible bind.
It's so,
because I mean, and I don't, unfortunately, one of the things that makes America great is that you have the power to do over your own life whatever it is that you want. I mean, you can buy the things you want, you can treat your body the way that you want, whether that's good or bad. I mean, that is part of the freedom and liberty that we have. And so, and along with that, we make stupid decisions that affect other people, that affect the people have to rescue us. It's kind of like going on a hike. You can't, there's no law against going on a winter hike in shorts, but somebody might have to come rescue you and save you, and that's going to cost
my
money.
dad and I had a long conversation about heroin, fentanyl, drugs, and this is just a few weeks ago, and he brought up some good points, and I wonder if we ever, like, if America ever gets to this point. There's other countries that are doing it, and I don't know how successful it is, and I'm not saying that I'm for it.
Okay, yeah.
But like we've legalized drugs essentially in Oregon. Why not have the government take control of it?
Of what?
Of drugs, and just manufacture the drugs, and that gets the cartel out of it. That gets people knowing exactly what they're getting, instead of getting this stuff that comes from Mexico or wherever it's. I mean, I know it's one of those things where you're like, no way, like.
Right.
But when you think about it logically, if we want to save lives, people are going to do drugs.
Right.
Period.
But if it's an interesting question. If you regulated illicit drugs the way you regulate alcohol, for instance, right?
Yeah.
So there's a process by which whether it's pure or not, or whether it's going to kill you. Whatever it might be.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Then what would happen?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because that's why you can't have a still. That's why you can't cook alcohol, hard alcohol at home. It's against the law.
Right.
Right. It's because you can kill people with it. Right.
Right.
But and there is laws against it. It's one of those catch-22s. It's like, and I don't know where I really stand on it, because I'm anti-drug 100%. Like, I want people to not do drugs.
Right.
But then at the same time, I want people to be alive. Like, I don't want people dying from this. And we've already shown in Oregon that we'll vote one way, which I think that 110 was designed moving towards the government taking control of drugs. It had to have been.
Well, and
Otherwise,
it had good intentions. But it was not fully funded. I had someone.
Yeah, it wasn't looked at right.
Yeah, I had someone tell me the other day that Oregon is known for these initiatives that they pass with no funding, and that causes these tremendous headaches, And I think that this is just one of those things. So it's like, so there's like, hey, let's decriminalize drugs and kind of push people towards drug treatment. Well, problem is they didn't fund or plan for the drug treatment.
Right.
And so then it didn't happen.
I mean, but it would be hard for somebody logically to argue that the government controlling illicit drugs is a bad idea. Right. Now, okay, there are some things that, and you're like, oh, okay, well, it's just another way for the government to make money, this, that. But then you wouldn't have Joe down the street buying a bag of heroin from Steve, who got it from, wherever he got it from. And it's probably been cut 3 or 4 times, and it's probably got fentanyl in it. And then you don't have Steve's kid getting a hold of, you know what I mean? Like you have this drug that has been tested, kind of like marijuana here, in Oregon. A grower has to prove that the marijuana has been tested for like the THC level or whatever. I mean, it's hard to. I'm starting to lean towards maybe that is the way to go. I don't know.
I guess the problem though is that just look at marijuana, for instance. So once it was legalized, again, it was legalized, but there was no structure for, okay, where do you put dispensaries? How do you regulate them? How close can they be to schools? How does a city put them in their planning zones? I mean, so there was none
I
of that.
think there was all that. In
No,
place.
there wasn't at first, and that was
There is now.
There is now,
Yeah.
but that's the point. So the point is that it it's not like you can flip a switch.
No.
And I mean, and part of the effort to have the dispensaries is that what is going to eliminate the black market, but I don't think it has done that at all.
Well, that's part of that's because too many places have voted not to have a dispensary.
And so then there's
obviously in LeGrand, we chose not to have a dispensary. So of course people are going to have a black market for weed.
But I think even, I mean, I don't know. I don't know much about that, but what I've heard is still there's very much a very raging, huge black market of marijuana.
You can't compare weed and fentanyl, heroin though, because if you smoke weed on a regular basis and Joe Schmo has some weed and the government has some weed, one of those isn't going to kill you.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Like if the government can tell a heroin addict, we have stuff that's not going to kill you.
Right.
We know exactly what's in it. And as you build your tolerance or whatever, you know exactly how much to take.
Yeah.
And then you have Steve, who's got a bag of heroin that nobody knows where it's coming from. Even a heroin addict's going to take the stuff from the government.
But what I'm saying, I'm talking about the mechanism that it takes for the government to take over something. That takes time.
Absolutely.
And
I don't know if I'm 100% for it. It was an eye opener.
Yeah.
It's like when you really think about it, it's like, what are we trying to do here? Is it fun for the cops to, try to track down drug lords? And how much would it eliminate if we did turn it over to the government? I think the black market in terms of like heroin, fentanyl, whatever opiates, I think the black market goes away very much so if the government controls it, just for the simple fact that the users know that, because I've watched tons of documentaries, I've talked to people, and heroin addicts know that their next shot could be dead. They know that, right? They're not dumb. They talk about it. If you could tell them, hey, the government's got that part of it covered for you,
right?
I doubt they keep frequenting the guy that is selling them the stuff that could possibly kill them.
Yeah. Well,
who knows?
I know that where we're at right now is not working.
Oh, it's terrible. It's so bad right now. And where's the answer come from? I mean, how do we reverse that 110? And I mean, it's just a mess.
It is.
It really is. It's disheartening is what it is, because I know a lot of people that have been affected by this, from people that use all the way, to law enforcement. And it has really had a profound impact on people in our community, because what, like Cody talks about, not being able to do anything, not being able to take the steps needed to get to the next guy. Right. And then you have, people that are, out there shooting up or smoking fentanyl and basically dying, getting shot with Narcan and calling it fun.
Like, wow, what a ride that was. That's craziness. All right. You want to get us out here?
Let's do it.
All right.
Short on this day today.
All right.
On this day, which is what, November 3rd, my sister's birthday. Happy birthday, Kelly. I love you. Mwah. 1911, on this day, Chevrolet officially entered the automobile market to compete with the Ford Model T. 1911.
Wow.
On this day in 1931, the first commercially produced synthetic rubber was manufactured. Synthetic rubber, 1931 on this day. 1975, on this day, Good Morning America premiered on ABC. Do you know who the first two? That's a tough one because they're not like super popular.
The first two
hosts. David Hartman and Nancy DeSalt.
No, I wouldn't. I've never
Me
known
neither.
that. Yeah.
1994, PlayStation. The very first PlayStation
94
console was released by Sony Interactive Entertainment in Japan.
Wow.
So PlayStation came out in 1994. That would have been my freshman year in high school.
Wow.
2014, on this day, New York's 104-story One World Trade Center officially opened 13 years after the September 11th attacks.
Wow.
The One World Trade Center. Crazy, huh?
Yeah.
What do you think the number one movie in America in 2002 on this day was, BC? Now, don't look at the picture and think about what time of year it is.
So it's Christmas.
Yeah, it's a
so maybe some Christmas movie, 2002.
Santa Claus 2. Goofy movie.
It was.
Yeah. I don't even remember the difference between
I
Santa
don't
Claus 1
either.
and Santa Claus
I
2.
always thought that was a clever,
Yeah.
the Santa Claus. It's the Claus. You've become, that.
Here we go. Quote for the day. Gratitude is a quality similar to electricity. It must be produced and discharged and used up in order to exist at all. One more time. Gratitude is a quality similar to electricity. It must be produced and discharged and used up in order to exist at all. And that's William Faulkner.
Good stuff.
And that's the show for Thursday. We're going to stream the football game tomorrow at 6.
Yep.
You volleyball this weekend, football at home.
Yep.
Go support the Mounties. Go support the Tigers.
So we will, next Tuesday is election day. Next Tuesday night.
It is, huh?
Next Tuesday night, we will have an election night show. Kyle will be up with Robin Church. I stopped and saw her yesterday and getting those results at 8 p.m. The show will start about 7.
So are we doing a morning show that day too?
We will probably do a show, but what it might be that we'll do it on our computers because the studio will be all set
Yeah,
up.
that's why I was asking. Like it's going to
Yeah.
be kind
And so I don't know.
smashed
We might
up.
not have a morning show that
We'll figure it out
yeah,
between
so-
now and then.
Yeah. Hey, thank you guys. Appreciate you watching.